Okay. Yeah, and so then like a warm welcome to Maryna. So I guess I will let you introduce yourself in a minute, but just so far that so I came across your magazine because I read an article in Perspective Daily that was actually doing a portrait on Rubryka on your magazine. And I found it really touching and fascinating. And yeah, I was actually just after finishing that article, I was just writing a mail to you like, okay, I read this, I found this super interesting, and I would love to have you in the salon. And so, thanks very much for being here. So, and if I got it right, you've been a reporter for Rubika for 6 years, I think.
Yes,
Um,
yes, definitely.
you're like one of the like the editorial, you're on the editorial board, I guess, if that's correct.
Yeah. I can dig a little bit deeper into that.
Mhm, sure.
If that's all right.
And
Yeah.
you're also like you studied solution-based journalism with the Solution-Based Journalism Network, correct? And yeah.
Yes.
So yes, I mean, let's maybe start. Why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So you've already given me a good start with all that. So yes, I am a senior editor at Rubryka. We have been doing solutions journalism for 6 years now, and that's exactly the time that I've been with Rubryka as a senior editor. Um, Yeah, the about the Solutions Journalism Network and being having received their training, I am a solutions journalism accredited trainer, as is our editor-in-chief, Anastasia Rudenko. So we are kind of pioneering the approach in Ukraine. And I should say that from the moment that we started doing it, when it was taken with a little bit of skepticism, now more and more newsrooms also are taking to trying this approach and using it in their editorial strategies and content creation. Yeah, I am. For those who have missed the beginning, I'm not based in Kiev, even though I have lived there for 10 years. Before the war started, I'm now based in Helsinki doing a PhD, but still working with Rubryka as usual, as always, and going to Ukraine, back to Ukraine regularly. Well, as regular as is reasonable. And yeah, most of our team is based in Ukraine, obviously, and the majority of people that work with us are based in Kyiv too.
Mhm. Okay, great. Um, so I read quite a lot of your articles, like from Rubika's articles in the last couple of weeks. And some of them actually I found very, very striking. But maybe before we go into detail with some of the articles, I would be interested to hear what was the story that was most touching for you, like the constructive story you or a colleague did, that was maybe the most touching and maybe also showing what you are trying to do best.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question and a tough one because I love every story that we have ever produced. But the first stories that came to mind is actually a few years old now. We did it in 2022 or 2023, so it was like quite early in the war, which is wild to say because it's been 4 years now. Um, and it was a story about a group of senior women living in a region close to the front lines. And they self-organized and started knitting things for our soldiers, for the armed forces of Ukraine. Because, yeah, it was in 2022, because the first winter was very tough. The not everyone had everything they needed in the front lines, and these women decided that they just had to help, and we covered their story, and it was really touching how they put everything they had, like everything they could do, to that big cause. And I remember after we published that piece, and it's also a little bit about how impactful solution journalism can be. We received some emails from other knitters, including from abroad, like from the United States, who were inspired by that story and who also wanted to contribute that way. And we also like served for a little while as a bridge between them and whoever might have needed those knitted goods in Ukraine. And the reason why it was so touching is because sometimes I feel like sometimes as people we think that we don't have the power, if, as like regular people, we don't really have the power to change things or to affect anything as big and disastrous as war, for example. But there are always ways, and the way that these women just found theirs, and many our stories are covering similar cases, similar responses that are just based on what people can do with what they have and what they are capable of. I think that's really like that's a good reminder for humanity in general these days.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, thanks. And what, I mean, what brought you to this field of journalism, like constructive journalism? And you say so you founded the magazine 6 years ago, so 2 years before the war. And you said it was already tough. There was not so much constructive journalism in Ukraine in that time. So what brought you to that field?
Yeah, well, Rubryka actually was founded in 2018. It's just that we didn't start with solutions journalism right away.
Okay.
And initially, it was just your regular media outlet. We have many of similar ones in Ukraine functioning like social, political kind of things, covering everything, a little bit of everything. So, yeah, that was the initial uh, appearance of Rubryka and what it was. But then, after a few years of work, it became, I wasn't yet part of the editorial team. I was contributing as a freelance journalist. But it became kind of obvious that Rubryka was leaning into covering stories of NGOs, of activists, of whatever was happening on that side of things. Um, and then accidentally, almost, our editor-in-chief attended a workshop by Jeremy Drucker. You might know him as an editor-in-chief or like CEO of Transitions, which is a media organization in the Czech Republic. And he is a great pioneer of solutions journalism in Europe in general and in Eastern Europe, Eastern Central Europe in particular. He was giving that workshop somewhere in Georgia, I think, on solutions journalism and what it is and what it means to practice it. And our editor-in-chief, Anastasia Rudenko, she attended it and I mean, I'm not her, I can speak for her, but I know the story. It just clicked. It was something that we already were kind of leaning into, and the approach in general sounded like something that was missing in then current media landscape in Ukraine. And yeah, that's how it started. At first, it was kind of an experiment, and I joined as a senior editor at that point, kind of leading that experiment. And then COVID hit. And we thought, okay, no more solutions. And we were wrong because solutions only, like the thing with solutions journalism, at least in our experience, is that once you are attuned to it, you kind of see it everywhere. You see the responses of people to problems and challenges everywhere. And I mean, problems with COVID, they only increased and intensified. So there was no lack of solutions to report on. And so it started from there. Little by little, we gained our experience, our expertise. We attended the Solutions Journalism Network many, many training sessions, and eventually the Train the Trainers program. Um, yeah, that's kind of what is behind what Rubryka is now.
Hmm. Okay. And so you said that the landscape was missing that. Why you think it was missing that?
Well, for starters, solutions journalism is quite a new approach. It only was, well, I mean, I think that people have been doing it for quite some time, but it only was officially founded in like 2014 or 2015. So it wasn't that long ago. Um, Also, in more generally speaking, we know that media are kind of prone to um, being all about doom and gloom. That is what gets people's reactions. That is what sells. That is what we are used to as journalists, I'd say. We don't naturally responds to something good happening as, yes, we need to cover that right now, as in, like, for example, when some disaster happens, then of course everyone is there and everyone is covering that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think these were the main two reasons. And also, um, even when we started doing that and it became kind of more visible within the Ukrainian media landscape, for example, and still some people are a bit skeptical about the approach, um, seeing it as fluff journalism, which isn't fair, to be honest, because it's just as good as any other approach if you do it properly, if you kind of don't um, compromise your integrity and things like that. But yeah, I think that the main reasons for it
Yeah.
being absent.
You know,
um,
that's so cool when you explain this because this I mean this could be a story from Germany so far. Just, just and the same problems, the same skepticism, the same old role models, the same old like struggling to get this accepted. And then I guess the story changes, right? Because then you couldn't say it's like in Germany anymore. So, or is it? I mean, I'm just talking from my own biases
um,
here. That's, yeah. I mean, was there like a shift afterwards? Did
you
you,
mean after the war or
yeah, after the war
no?
started?
In terms of like how solutions journalism is perceived or is practiced or how many newsrooms are practicing it, like in terms of media landscape, no, it didn't change much. Um, I think. And we also, like, to be frank, when the war started, we were very, again, like with COVID, we were, but worse, we were very skeptical about like, are we gonna continue with our solution story? Are we gonna continue with this strategy? Is anyone still interested in reading these? And for a couple of weeks, I wanted to say months because it felt like it was months, but yeah, it was, I think, a couple of weeks, maybe a month tops. We were really debating what are we doing next, and most of our content back then, I mean, we were working 24/7. It was all news, 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 or like really hands-on instructions on, I
Yeah,
don't know. I remember we had a really popular instruction how to survive a nuclear strike.
yeah.
So we were like doing things like that. Um, but over time, not a very long time, a few weeks, as I said, we kind of the fog has cleared a little bit, and we realized that, yeah, such stories are actually more needed than ever. And they were on demand, like of demand even before the war, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't have existed for that long.
Mm.
But in these current circumstances, and especially as the war goes on and continues, we see that the longer it takes, the more this kind of coverage is needed. And not only because it like lifts the spirits or anything like that, but also because it's very practical. Uh, Things that we cover, initiatives that we cover, responses that we cover, they are really something that is happening right now uh, to meet the needs of people living at war. And when we cover some kind of response, we always hope that someone from a different community or from a different region or whoever might see that and realize that this is the answer to their problem and they can use the same insights to solve their problem. Or, of course, most of the time is just someone who might need the exact response that is already being implemented and they can just go there and benefit from that. So it's kind of public service in a way when we try to be as useful as possible. And I don't think that war is like the only thing or the only thing that makes it very timely and important to do more constructive oriented journalism globally in general, because even though you don't have war in Germany, for example, you have many other issues, I'm sure. And um, and people might need to, see the coin flipped, because everyone knows what is wrong, but I'm sure like there are some responses to what is wrong going on already. And even if you're saying there is a lot of skepticism towards solutions journalism now there, but you don't need to label it solutions journalism if you are kind of a bit aware of that media landscape response. You can just do that and people won't notice, but they will read your stories or watch your reportage or whatever, because like on a level like on some personal level they will still be drawn to that kind of story. Yeah,
Mm.
I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, I guess you have a question. So yeah, I mean, I have like two or three more things, but I can like sneak them in the middle. So yeah, let's just open to everybody. And I will try to, because I have like some of the articles that I read and I wanted to ask you something specific on them, but so you
Mm.
had a question, Heike, right? So I guess like since not all of you know each other, maybe just briefly introduce you when you speak for the first time and not like blah blah blah, my business, blah blah blah, but maybe just something, why are you here? And yeah.
My name is Heike. I also work at Der Spiegel, um, actually 2 floors down from this one, and I report on psychology and family issues.
Mm.
So not so much the hard news, but many human stories and also constructive stories and quite psychologically deep stories. And yeah, that's very enjoyable. And one presumption is that when you do solutions journalism, that it doesn't draw the same amount of clicks. It just doesn't interest the same amount of people. Maybe the ones that read it, they're very grateful, but it doesn't draw the same amount of interest because it's not about doom and gloom. So if you say people read you, like how do you measure it? How did your traffic? Are you only? Actually, I must admit I haven't looked at Rubryka before this saloon, so it would be great if you could say, are you only printed? Are you printed or are you only online? And then how did your traffic curves develop through this complete change towards solution journalism?
Yeah, we are only online. So we have a website and a presence across different social media platforms. Um, ooh,
I will show your.
That would be nice. That would be my second
yeah.
Uh,
question. Thank you.
Um, yes, and in terms of our uh, traffic and things like that, it has actually grown. I cannot be like 100% certain of the growth from like 2018 to 2020 because it I don't think it would be even fair to compare a newborn media outlet to a media outlet that's already been a little bit there in the landscape. But currently we have about 2 million readers monthly. And so that's quite a big number for Ukraine, I'd say, especially when we are considering all the problems with the power outages and things like that. And quite a followership online. I won't be naming the numbers because I don't remember, but there are like tens of thousands of followers across different platforms. And in terms of attracting readers, attracting audience, I think that, well, naturally, nothing will ever beat watching a car crash. Like people will watch that. 100% they will click on a disaster hyping headline. But at the same time, there are actually studies that show that I can find those after this meeting and maybe share if you're interested, that people do, well, first of all, engage more with with more constructive and solutions-oriented pieces. They are more likely to read it through. And as to how to attract them in the first place, I mean, like whatever you do with your regular story, try to come up with an interesting hook, and that is the best you can do. Um, I think in that way, and at least for us, it works. And especially if your audience over time you kind of train your audience a little bit, and people get accustomed to seeing that kind of stuff on your website or wherever. Um, yeah, it I think it picks up over time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so maybe I can sneak in like my first question because it's really fitting here. Because I guess what you were saying, Maryna, before was that it couldn't be more timely, first in the pandemic, now with the war, because people need some inspiration, or you could also say people need hope, like what we can do, a perspective, like a way to fix things, a way to continue. Um, and maybe that's something you need even more in darker times. And like at least from the emotional psychological studies that I know, that this might be just as a strong emotion as fear or outrage, you know.
Mm.
So it could actually draw a lot of people into something, because like if something goes viral, or if something goes like draws people in, it's usually a strong emotion behind. And this, in classical journalism, this is usually fear or outrage. And but it could also be hope. It could also be maybe awe, you know, like something, wow, this is so cool. How did they do that? It could be something that is actually called kamamuta, which is it's not a good translation, but it's something like you're spontaneously touched by something. This is also a
Mhm.
very strong impulse. So there could be other more constructive, more pro-social emotions that are actually as strong as a hook as the other ones that we are using. And I was wondering if you are noticing that, because I mean this was one of the stories that touched me really a lot, you know, like this guy in a wheelchair who's actually like um counseling his whole town on how to make it more accessible, like how to make it barrier free. And so on one level, it doesn't have to do anything with the war, because it's just this guy had this disability, I think, even before, and he started to do this before, but now you have a lot of wounded veterans, of course. So it has this other level, which is like has a connection to the war. So the story of this guy, which is very inspiring, like how he seems to be a very charming guy as well, and very funny guy. And so he's really like with his charm, he's able to change his whole town, and I think is still doing it nowadays. And on the same level, he's really inspiring maybe for all the veterans and like giving them a perspective if they are wounded, that maybe their life could improve even with some impairments. And so this was one of the stories that I found really touching and like digging into this hope. But then, and I guess then I'm also finished with my part, and I will try to shut up. I also thought that maybe there's like a little downside on this because now I don't find it. I guess was one of your newer stories.
Yeah, tell me what you're looking for, and I will tell you where to find it.
Yeah, like this, I think it was like this Danish collective that was like rebuilding a city, doing restructuring work, but in a really
E-
cool way.
Yes, you can go up and click rubrics, choose cases,
Yeah,
and
that's
it should
what
be
I was.
somewhere there. Yeah.
Ah, there, patronage as a solution,
Mm,
right? So, because I mean, there I wasn't quite sure if it was written by this NGO themselves, or if it was written by one of your reporters. But so this is also a really cool, inspiring story about how this collective of Danish NGOs is rebuilding like a town. Like,
mm.
what was the name of the town?
Mykolaiv.
Mykolaiv.
Mm.
Was that the region?
No, it's the same for region and
The region and this town, okay. And so they didn't just stop by sending money or by like rebuilding, but they were actually like doing more and continuing and having all these other cool levels of how we can help and how we can organize something and how we can make this sustainable, that even if there's new destruction, it can be solved and so on. And so it's like, and they have really a lot of success. Um, and so at the same time, and I even, I mean, I almost felt like, I almost couldn't bring myself to be critical about that, but I was like, okay, but there are some things in this that might be not so great or might be not so sustainable, or maybe it is not such a scalable solution. So there are like some limits, like in every constructive story, that you don't really question the whole idea, but you find maybe some things that might be worth improving or might be developing further. And this seemed to be like too perfect to me. Like this is like all just success and success, and maybe it is. But so I was wondering if there was a reason why this was not following this. This transcript of constructive journalism, that you also should be critical about the solution you report,
mm,
because it was the NGO was writing it, or even because maybe, I mean, because this gives so much hope, like you could, and then if you organize this better, you could do this rebuilding so much better, and this would be so important that it even feels like I even feel terrible speaking this now, like this, like being critical is stealing a little bit of the hope, and then you are like the little journalist in me is fighting with like the human being that actually wants this much more in the world. And
mhm.
so I sort of had a dilemma when I was reading this, and so I guess like there's this big inspirational upside of hope, but maybe then there's like this downside, and I'm even not sure if it's appropriate if you say, okay, maybe it's more important that people are doing this than you have like your journalistic ethics. Maybe they don't matter so much on that. So, but there was like a conflict in me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. And this was our piece. It was our reporter
Okay.
who wrote it. The Okay, I will say this. In some pieces, it's not that we omit limitations parts whole, like in general, wholly. In some pieces, I'd say that the limitations are kind of built in, especially for Ukrainian reader. For example, with this Mykolaiv and Denmark thing, the biggest risk and limitation is very obvious for anyone who is in Ukraine. Mykolaiv is very close to the, well, close-ish to the front lines, and that's the reason why it's so destroyed to that point. And every effort that goes into its reconstruction right now, it might all go up in smoke
Yeah.
after another strike. So that's one thing that kind of is built in, and whoever is living in Ukraine or is close to the Ukrainian context, they will probably see that. The I wouldn't say that we uh, omit consciously again these limitations things. Sometimes it's more to, the like classical solutions journalism is all about the solution needs to be tested, and one of the like testers is time. And in many solutions that we are covering and reporting on, there just hasn't been enough time to see if the solution is stable and reliable long term. It might be working now, but we don't know what will happen in a year when like another building gets bombed or like something else happens. But living in the context that we live now, we made this conscious choice that we prioritize reporting swiftly on topics that are urgent. Uh, of course, keeping to our integrity and all that, but that those parts of like, does it really work and what hasn't been working so well, they are not that prominent sometimes. Yeah, and another thing, by the way, is that sometimes our English language versions are a little bit different from the Ukrainian
Okay.
language versions. That is due to like how we view our audiences, and whenever we look at a piece in Ukrainian, it's often, well, like I said before, our main goal is for someone else to see that and maybe think that that's solution for them. It's not about this Denmark piece, but like in general, that might be the solution for them. That might be something they might want to employ in their community. And there, the like the details of how it works and what might not be working so well, and like what are the limitations, are more detailed. Details more detailed, whatever. And in English, we just find that it's not that, again, like someone said before, Stefan, I think that with the international audiences a bit fatigued by war, we are trying to stay as punchy, God forbid, like we do anything else, as possible with what we report to the international audiences, and we try to make it
Yeah.
more topical
Yes,
for them,
and
let's say.
by the way, I feel terrible to be so boring and about this
No, 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 no. That's a very
point.
legit question, actually. Yes, because
Um, and just coming back to the upside. I mean, if you just scroll through these cases, which I basically did, that was my preparation because this seemed to be like the big solution-based reportage. If you just scroll down this page, I mean, it's just, I mean, it was really like touching me deeply how different this angle of looking at your country is than from what I'm reading in the German media every day, and even if we have some other reports, but they are like a drip in the ocean. And if you just scroll this down, there are so many heartwarming but also like inspiring ideas, so many like hard analytically proven cases. And I mean there seems to be so much going on, and that I guess like every second or third story was like, this is so cool, I want to write on that, and so it's just amazing how different this feels when you're reading about it like this. And it's not that you are forgetting about that there's a war and there's all this horror, but you are sort of a little bit more, yeah, I don't know, hopeful.
Hmm. Well, war is very present in every piece that is here. It's just that, yes, exactly what you're saying. We are trying to look at things from this perspective too. Of course, we know, and we report on the horrible things too.
Yeah, yeah,
But looking at what people are actually doing with that to go through these experiences is very inspiring. And by the way, it has been, I would say, it has been quite therapeutic for our reporters as well.
yeah.
Everyone we worked with, they are like they have at least once told me that it has been good for their mental health to work on these stories and see that things are being done and people are doing something, and seeing that spark in other people who still find it in themselves that they can affect things around them. It has been healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have some agency, right?
Yeah. Agencies. Yes, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so I will shut up now, please. Salon is open. Your questions.
If you have any.
I have one more, but maybe one of you. No, I go ahead. It's doing just solutions journalism. It looks like a beautiful platform, and I will definitely want to read more of the stories. Just one thought, and that's maybe a bit of ambiguity that comes that I bring in here, and consciously I want to bring it up because we are all not used to solutions journalism, so the thought might arise that it reminds me a little of the magazine I get from the NGO I support every month. It's they look after poverty and education and women's rights and girls' rights, and it's enjoyable to read, but somehow it it like it's just a feeling that it lacks the what they it's maybe it's just too unusual, but you get that idea that people say, well, it's a bit activist and a bit overly positive, like you said, and a bit like what an NGO would write. Like, what do you answer then? How do you distinguish, like, how do you make the cut, and how do you say that we're not an NGO platform, we are actual
They
high quality journalism?
they actually do cover the other. They are not just doing
Yeah.
construction. They also do the news.
Okay.
So I was
Yeah, I
just
was
on
going to say
the
that.
I was just on the
Okay.
sub page with all the constructive stories, but the homepage is also full of like the news that you get on Spiegel. So yeah,
Okay, so you just
it's
have
with it. Yeah,
one
yeah.
strong kind of pillar
Yeah,
that. Okay.
this is sort of our core solutions journalism and the uniqueness that we bring with us. But alongside with that, yeah, we do cover news. We do like for the photo reportages. We send our reporters to the front lines, well, to the frontline regions. We like, most of all cherish their safety. It's only if they are really willing to go and cover those things that they're going. But yeah, we cover all sort of things. But as to the question how that differs from activism and like NGO stuff and all that, yeah, that's a very interesting one because in the classical understanding of journalism, journalism should always be very impartial and yeah, well, impartial, which is extremely important, of course, and we still abide by that. But at the same time, I think what Rubryka also does is serves as kind of a bridge between the NGOs and like the general public, so to speak, our audience. And sometimes we even like do physical things, like we help them in some of the ways that we can, and things like that. And I don't think that's wrong. I don't think journalism always needs to be kind of drawn away. We are still part of the society we live in.
Yeah.
We bear a lot of responsibility with that, being a media outlet, especially. And I think that um, like as long as you abide by the general principles of what it means to be a journalist and to report on something, I don't think it's wrong if your pieces might be perceived by someone as like NGO,
Mm.
like leaning into that kind of writing or texts or whatever. I hope I make sense. I'm getting a little bit tired after the day.
Yeah.
I hope it all makes sense. But yeah, we can discuss that a little bit because that's really an interesting thing to talk about. The way that does the that's a bit unrelated to Rubryka, but in general, like, does the journalism we are used to serve us still? Is it something that we might need to rethink? That's something that I sometimes think about, and yeah, there is no easy answer.
I would like to add that, I mean, like traditional journalism is also not impartial, you know. There's like maybe it's impartial on a certain level, but so for example, Spiegel magazine had this claim that they are the like the protection shield of democracy. So that's not impartial. You're not saying like I'm impartial to democracy. So either you like it or you don't like it, it's fine. But no, I mean, so there's like maybe you're impartial on a more detailed level, like which way is the right way. But on this higher ethical level, if you want democracy or not, you are not impartial. You're actually very biased that you like democracy and you want it to continue and that you are actually doing all your work for this. So this is
Mhm.
not partial. No? Daniel, you had a yeah.
Yes. Um, Hello, Marina. Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel. I'm not a journalist. I'm a friend of Stefan, enjoying this group. Thank you very much for presenting your journalistic style. Um, my question is, I see a certain divide in at least the German society, and I think also on a broader scale, that if your journalism represents um, so to speak, a good side of humanity or of a good cause. In German, we have a term that is called Lügenpresse. It would be not very well translated with liar's press or something like that. So, um, but now my question is: so when you represent a certain like kindness, helpfulness, when you open up the room for new solutions, like you do you feel an internal, and with internal I mean from the Ukrainian society, also a pushback from some wings and attitudes against you? So do you have to fight for what you are representing because there are people fighting against you? Do you experience that as well?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for the question. The short answer would be no. The longer answer would
Mm.
be we have some critical voices sometimes coming at us, and more often than not, they come from the media sphere itself. Like there are some people that we know that are strongly opposing to the whole idea of solutions journalism, but it doesn't matter much, to be frank. But as to the like general population, society, people who follow and read any kind of media. No, we don't see that. And I think, especially now, the reason isn't, well, in Ukraine, it's of course very closely tied to war. Sometimes when you are, people in Ukraine are very plugged into the whatever is happening in the media, news every day, every night. Everyone is always on their phone,
Yeah.
checking what is happening. And that has, well, aside from war itself, which is, of course, an awful influence on people's well-being, the being chronically online and chronically following news out of necessity is not good for your mental health either. And whenever you see a story that is in your feed that you are constantly scrolling, a story that is different from this is wrong, this is bad, this is horrible, and now we are waiting for this, which is going to be even worse. You can, of course, you can't ignore all that. That is part of your reality. But when you see something positive, it people are drawn to that exactly because of how the rest of their reality looks like. And I think that's part of the reason why there is no pushback. And I think in other countries, while of course the situations are not as harsh as in Ukraine, like living in Finland, for example, I can tell that like people are not super happy all the time because it's just not how people are, even though Finland is the happiest country in the world. LOL. But
On one metric, right? Yeah.
yeah, but like still everything around us kind of pushes us towards this more depressing state. Things are never going well. Whatever happens, things are not going well. And with the general state of the world, it's pretty understandable. And I think that even in the countries with more subtle situations, it will still be beneficial for people to be exposed to stories that are more constructive. I'm not talking about like positive news. No,
Yeah.
it's not just being more constructive, looking at both kind of sides, the problem and the possible responses, and seeing how that might be working or not. Because we reported on some failed solutions too. There are not too many failed solutions that we have covered on our website, but yeah, sometimes when we start to kind of investigate, it turns out that something is very wrong with what is happening there. And we still deliver that story so that we caution people against doing that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. I hope it answered the question.
It did, and I'm very glad that that you have such a broad support across different angles from society and political views or whatever. So that's I really like it. May I ask another question, or anybody else in the group?
Sure,
I
go ahead.
wonder with if you look into your reader structure, is there a certain kind of people where you have more readers than others? So is it like from an age perspective or a gender perspective or any angle? Do you see any like interesting portions there, or do you and trends as well? So you might have started with a certain number of 50-year-old women, I don't know, just making up, and then another group grew exponentially over time. Did you find surprises there?
Um, Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that anything is very surprising in that sense, in the sense of what our audience looks like, or have has ever looked like. But there was once a surge, specifically with the 50 years old women. Yeah, I don't remember exactly when that happened, but there was like part of our journey. We were very actively supported by them. But in general, the way our audience looks like is very, I don't want to say standard, but I don't think it's very unusual. We have like maybe 50-50 close to 50-50 gender division. The age-wise, it's most of our audience is like 30 to 45. Sorry for being vague, but it's just these numbers. I hate this. Yeah, and most of our audiences are from big cities, so that's probably, well, maybe not most, maybe half, but yeah, that's one important thing. And we also know that our most active readers are very involved with civil society. They are either activists or somehow volunteer, but like most of Ukrainians are somehow volunteering these days. So yeah, that's like this. I'd say that the core of our audience is this very socially active type of a person. And that's not a coincidence, of course, given what we do. Yeah.
I would be interested in your view on all of this because so you're reporting from Lebanon. I mean, you're not quite doing the same. It's not really constructive journalism, it's more peace journalism. So you're more interested in you're hosting these interview formats, right, where people are somehow trying to find a middle ground on like different opinions. But could you maybe share a bit what you do and how you look at this and what you are hearing? Because I would be very interested in your view. If you don't want, if you feel like picked out, then it's fine, okay?
No, I'd be very happy to answer. And apologies if I go on and out, but I have a very botchy internet
Yeah.
connection because we have a storm. Anyway, no, it was really interesting to hear all that. Just to give you like a bit of a background. So I grew up in Lebanon during the Civil War, right? And my first approach to journalism was actually what I was reading on the news, especially international news, was not reflecting my reality because on the ground we were surviving, we were living, right? So of course there were bombs. I know we were hearing the bombs, there were battles, etc. But since I was a kid, I actually felt that the news was not reporting the whole story, right? Fast forward years later, I became a journalist, actually a business journalist, and then I discovered solution journalism also some years ago. And then I felt that it was a more complete picture because in any conflict that I've seen, and to be fair, I've only seen the one in Lebanon and in Syria, you always have people trying to find solutions to the problem that they're facing because this is survival. Like some people take it one step further and actually fight, but it's really survival. So I think that journalism, especially the news, because feature sometimes is a bit better, but journalism as we have done it for the past decade is actually missing a huge chunk of the story, right? Like we've been trained to basically get the bad news because if it bleeds, it leads. But that's not true anymore. You were saying like, does it still serve us? News fatigue is real, right? Like I think it's 40% of people who don't read the news anymore because it's too depressing. And solution journalism or solution-oriented pieces or constructive pieces, I really think that they have a wider impact, especially on social media, to be very fair. Like I follow it's not even constructive or solution journalism platform like Le Monde in France or The Economist or The Financial Times. They do an amazing job on TikTok and it's very solution-oriented. It's not solution journalism per se, but you always have solutions brought in or constructive information. So all that to say that I think we're kind of trying to catch up with society and we're trying I know solution journalism is still like small in a way and it's facing a lot of not cynicism but skepticism because there is still this idea of we need to hold power accountable and all this kind of stuff. But I think that a lot of the society is already asking for way more than just the news, how we present them, and being able to talk about how people are living or fighting in Ukraine or in Lebanon or in Iran, it's really important, I think. Like, I really think that just war journalism or conflict journalism is just half of the story, which was the feeling that I got from you, Maryna. It's like you're, as you mentioned, like once you start looking, when you switch your mind, right, to solution journalism, you see solutions everywhere because they're here. They're literally here. It's just that we were not seeing them before. Yeah, what we do at the What If is just like sort of it's more constructive journalism or peace journalism. It's this idea of how we cover a topic so that people who don't agree can talk to each other. Because we do have a problem of not being able to talk to each other on topic that we don't agree with, agree at, so on. So this is what we do mostly these days. We started with peace, but we're moving it a bit to constructive. But solution is part of constructive. So I think, or there are things that go together.
I will show the
Mm.
what if as well.
Yeah, thank you. Because that sounds really fascinating. And we've been interested in this, like complicating the narratives thing as well, and trying to, when there is an issue that is very charged and perhaps polarized, it
Yeah.
would be interesting and very beneficial to try and bring people kind of together in one piece and try to communicate something within that. Yeah, we've been looking into that. It would be, I should remember your website name and then check it out later because yeah,
I
this
will
is
put it in the chat.
Mm.
I'm just lost. I think you redesigned your website. It looks much more
Yeah, so
professional, but I don't. So there were these cool, these cool round tables of like really
yeah,
many people reporting on issues, and it was somewhere between citizen journalism and I guess peace journalism, right? And yeah.
yeah. So we redesigned. So we changed a lot of things since the last time that we talked. So this
So
now is
cool.
actually more of a communication website for
Yeah,
the What If peace building activities.
yeah.
And then we have another website which is called the Peace Builders Circle,
Oh,
which is
okay, that's
political.
what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but I can put it on the chat.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, so these are more but yeah, I mean, this is so cool. Yeah, just let's just show that for 1 second because that was really like I loved that when I found that. And maybe you
The Peace
can
Builders.
talk a bit about that. Is this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, very top of named.
Which one would be a good example then? Where should I click?
For example, the one with the food, the people with the food. That's typically a solution-oriented story, actually, um, and constructive. It's about people from two fighting neighborhoods in Tripoli, Lebanon, who came together through an association called March, and who learned how to talk to each other through theater or through some activities, etc., and who now like do community work. This is an pure article, solution-based, constructive, this kind of stuff.
Wow,
That was fun. The
great.
design is still not there, huh? We really need to work on the design, but we're getting there. Mm.
I really love that. I mean,
Mm.
thanks for right. And also thanks for continuing this. Nadia, you wanted to say something or?
No, I was just applauding.
Oh, you were applauding. Okay. Um, yeah, so maybe then if I may, I think I'm talking too much and I'm facilitating too little, but so I'm still wondering if this, I mean, you have this like this umbrella term, constructive journalism, right? But if this might, I mean, it's good in one way because it unifies and it gives you some kind of label in your head and some general direction. But if this isn't too imprecise, especially these days, especially if I'm like listening to you, Maryna, when I'm like, I mean, I was pointing out this very German, boring, being critical and something really cool, and then somehow I shifted the atmosphere to this for quite a while in this salon, and but like I was coming from my, like my Western journalism standards that I was like projecting onto like what you are doing in a country where the context is completely different, and that the context is maybe much more like it's in a state of much more insecurity, of much more like emergency reactions. So like things need to be done now because if you don't do them now, so like much more urgent, much more insecure, much more changing, much more doom and gloom. It's not like if you're doom scrolling here and you're reading like 90% is about scenarios what could go wrong and not what's actually like if you go out, you always be surprised how great the world is actually, right? It's like there's a big discrepancy between what you read and all these fear scenarios and how the world really looks like outside. And I mean, that's not. I mean, I'm trying to be a bit funny, but yeah, I guess you get my point, right? But so I mean, in your context, it's like I'm just saying it's a completely different context. So I guess it's really narrow-minded if you just like project some sort of idealistic standards and then you're measuring the journalism. So I guess like different contexts need different approaches to journalism, and maybe you take them from the same source, but you would have to apply them to your context, and maybe that journalism looks a lot different. And as I was questioning myself why I was spelling this out, like maybe in a context like being in a war for almost 4 years, it's not such a bad thing to make people hopeful. And maybe this standard of being like super German and always find something critical is not the standard that is most wise and not appropriate, you know? So without being too relativistic, I'm just saying that maybe constructive journalism is not the same all over the world, although the solution-based network is actually trying to be very international, right? But
Yes, yes, yes. Well, you have every right to be critical because it like growth lies where criticism is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be anywhere without that. But yeah, the as to how solutions journalism specifically, because constructive journalism is a bit vague. It's kind of like yeah, like you said, it's an umbrella term, and then there are all different kind of stuff there. And solutions journalism is one of the tools of constructive journalism, I would say. Yes, the standards are pretty rigid within that, which is only right. I wouldn't say that we don't abide by them really, because we do. And whenever there is something missing, again, so this is not like a self-defense or anything, just like
yeah, it shouldn't.
continuing on this thought. Um,
No
if
need.
there is something missing, that's probably either due to the context or due to the urgency, or it's again like kind of built in. And with this particular, because it's interesting that you brought up this particular story about Denmark and patronage, because the reason we did that is this mechanism of patronage, and which should have actually, or no, we have that in the beginning. It's available for the whole of Ukraine, and any country can take a patronage over a certain region.
Oh,
That's how it is supposed to work, but only a couple actually done that.
yeah,
Only a couple regions are patronaged as of now. So the Mykolaiv region and Zhytomyr, I think, with Estonia. And all the others are just putting bids until the war ends. So kind of the choice why we did this on Mykolaiv was to show how it already works somewhere and the kind of the benefit it brings. And yeah, there are risks, of course, including possible corruption risks and,
exactly.
and things like that. Yeah. But again, like you said, yes, in these circumstances, it was the priority to talk about what benefits this kind of solution might bring to the people who are suffering right now.
Yeah,
Because the only other alternative is to just leave things as they are,
exactly.
which is not a real alternative at this point because the war is going on and on and on.
Exactly.
Mm.
And actually that's what I was meaning, right? So no need to defend because I was really not attacking. It was more like interested in this how you take a concept and then you apply it to a certain context and then it grows in a different direction, you know? But
Mm.
it is just, I mean, it grows into the direction where it's most helpful to your context, right? And
Yeah.
so
And also,
and that would be really interesting to like to observe, you know, like how
mm,
this is developing and what new things might come out of this that we don't know yet, and that are maybe not included in the general menu of constructive journalism, but are maybe really, really cool to look in, and maybe they should put it in that manual,
Mm.
Was more meant in that way. So what we can learn from you and not, yeah, you
I
know?
know that there are actually quite some debates among people who practice solutions journalism as to, do we need another pillar? Do we need all four? What is the kind of what is the division in the final product between the pillars that we already have? So yeah, it's a living thing,
Yeah.
and if you look at other outlets across the globe that implement solutions journalism, something is always a little bit different, yes. And I also wanted to mention that even though we do position ourselves as the solutions journalism outlet, some of the stories, well, obviously, some of the stories are not solutions journalism. That is very obvious news, for example, and things like that. But even things like for example, that piece on Ivan, I forgot his last name, but the one that you shared before, the man who is changing his community. Strictly speaking, it's not solutions journalism, but it
Mhm.
contains solutions journalism elements, and that is how we position a lot of our, well, maybe not a lot of, but like some of our content,
Mm.
that it is solutions journalism oriented, that it contains elements. Because one of the main rules of solutions journalism is that it is not supposed to be person-centered.
Not a
Uh,
hero story, right? Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. And this one is really very much person-centered, but it was just such a beautiful story that we couldn't help but
Yeah.
Why
couldn't
not?
help but.
Why is it not
Yeah.
supposed to be person-centered?
Why not? Because, well, mainly it means that you're not supposed to be focusing on personal qualities of someone who is implementing a solution, because that is very, like, subjective and, you know, the drill. Um, and instead, you need to be focusing on the actual responses and what is working within them and all that. And here in this piece, we are focusing on a man who is making things happen rather
Although
than.
he's saying it's neither about heroism nor about pity. He's saying that.
Exactly.
He must be a really cool guy, to be honest. And I mean, it also shows his weak sides, and his inner struggles. And it's just a very good reportage. We can agree on that. And very empathetic and yeah. But yeah, and you're right. I mean, I guess most stories are not so purist, right? Maybe it's
Mhm.
because it's a new genre that people are especially strict on it. But I guess if you look at any reportage or anything, I mean, there's always like mixes of genres, and otherwise it would be boring as well. And I guess the general point is it should be a credible story. It shouldn't be like a dreamy, what you say was
Mhm.
a little funny tone was good news, which you have a lot. Like this positivistic, naive stories when you like where people are afraid, like in these negative stories, reporters are sometimes afraid to research so that they find a solution
Mhm.
and that the story is not so terrible. The same happens with positive news when you're like afraid to research and you find out that the solution is not that great and both is destroying your story. So and I guess that's meant with it. It should be good journalism. You shouldn't have your confirmation bias and like leaving things out that are destroying your story. And it doesn't matter if it's too positive or too negative,
Mhm.
both is not very healthy. But yeah, but I mean, Stefan, I would be interested in your view because I mean, you've been quite a long time in Ukraine. And so how do you look at this approach if you want?
Yeah, sure, sure, I want. Yeah, to me, it's very interesting to see how, well, I think there's always this problem with these constructive stories that it's pretty hard to find the readership for it. We talked about it before. The algorithms in social media work in a way that the sensationalist stuff, the horrible stuff, gets a larger audience very easily than the small human positive stories. But when you bring it to the people, I always see that they are really thankful about it. And that's so interesting. Also, when I do presentations about my book, so it's often they are most what's touching the most is often those little human stories of some volunteers in Ukraine. Like, for example, I visited Repair Together, this organization where young volunteers are rebuilding villages and learning how to build houses, and they do this. Or I met this guy in Kharkiv, this Japanese 75-year-old guy who just started to donate food to people who were like in the subways, who were taking shelter there, and later he opened a restaurant where he's giving away free food for like hundreds of or thousands of people every day. Um, and these are the stories that are really touching people most. And this is interesting, but it's probably not the things they would click on if they see this online, or this is not the kind of story they would easily find. And this is an observation that I have. And then they come to me and complain that the mainstream media is not
Yeah.
talking about the human stories, but basically in reality they just don't notice them, or they're not really looking, or they're so tired of this war topic that they're not even looking for those human interest stories that you can find in every big media. I mean, Ukraine is so well covered, actually, also in German media, but I think at Spiegel, I guess you would have the same experience that nowadays you wouldn't get this amount of clicks anymore. But one question that I would have is also about the audience. What, in your experience, Maryna, what is the solutions journalism stories that reach the biggest audience or engage with the audience best? Is it stories about some volunteers doing something inspiring? Is it something that helps you in your own life, or what kind of stories work best in your
Yeah.
experience?
It's well, usually, and it will concern a little bit what you were talking about earlier about how people won't even click on stories about those like on personal stories that they claim they actually crave for. I think that's because they don't feel personal connection to any of that, and they're like, doesn't concern me, bye bye. And in our case, I think that the stories that work best are those that are concerning most. So, for example, or like in many it can be manifested in different ways. For example, in January, one of our biggest pieces was on the ways that volunteers in specifically in Kiev are helping people to survive the blackouts and life without heat in negative 20 degrees and things like that. And it was very well read and very well engaged with. Again, it wasn't like as in depth as a classical
Yeah.
solutions journalism piece would go, but we kind of covered all the bases that we needed. And also, yeah, some practical things, something that we might cover, like an initiative that is doing something, for example, working with veterans with their mental health and kind of reintegrating them into society in a way. And it might sound like a very not generic piece, but like something that is not directly concerning everyone, because it's just talking about like some very specific thing that is doing very specific things with very specific people. But at the same time, most of people in Ukraine have someone in the army or someone who is already a veteran and all that. And when we look at an initiative that is doing something, they might pick up some things from whatever is discussed there and employ in their daily life. So I'd say it's a mix of like hands-on advice and stories of people who change something through their activism. But the most important thing is that the topic, the core of all these pieces is something that is really topical, like that concerns many.
Yeah,
Mm.
makes sense. Also,
Or again, something emotional. If it doesn't concern you, but it brings you the emotion you crave, or maybe not so much, it will also work. Something inspiring, something again, I'm speaking in circles, sorry.
no. I was also wondering if reach, like, clicks, it's not the only metric, right? There are also like pro-social metrics that are not really measured, but they might be also important. I mean, we did a whole salon on this as well. So, oh, you did this and it was
Very good looking around.
it was cool. Like investigative journalism, for example, that what example Spiegel does a lot. It's also not the stories that give you like 1 million clicks or like 500 new abos. It would be more like a psychological story on how to be more happy in your relationship, that you get a lot of, you know, and still we do a lot of investigative journalism because we know it's important, just as like maybe solutions journalism. So it's not the first genre that is done because it has other value than just clicks and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, still, Stefan, you're absolutely right. That like there are different systems who are all aligned in a bad way, sort of speaking. So our brain is wired for fear and rage. The algorithms of the platforms are like using this as a business model. Traditional media is sort of forced to play along to not get blown away completely from the attention of people, and the political system, at least in a democracy, works a bit like this as well, because in the parliamentary democracy you always have the opposition who is looking at the negative things the government does, and then they tell the journalist, and they are blowing it up even more, and then they are feeding it out. And then, like, the fear-wired brains of the readers are reading it, and then they complain to you, Stefan, that you just write about negative stuff. And it's like all these systems are in a bad loop somehow, right?
And in fact, everybody is so tired of it.
And everybody hates it, and nobody's finding a way out because sort of, yeah. But Nadia, I would be interested in your view on all of this if you want.
I'm really just taking it all in. It's for me quite new as a thought, and I'm just in awe of all the possibilities and all the thinking that went into this way of doing journalism. Yeah.
So Nadia founded a magazine in Switzerland. But do they do constructive journalism?
I don't know. Well, I think they do, especially in, I mean, I would call it probably that after what I've heard, mostly in the area of climate journalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if, they do a lot of events that kind of add to their content and create debate. I don't know if that would fall like in more in-depth debate around real issues, especially for voters in Switzerland, for them to kind of come to their own conclusions, because we vote every year, like at least 4 times on real issues. I don't know if that would also fall into this category.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they would call it that, but I guess, yeah, I guess they're doing some of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Fascinating.
If you say
Thank you, and vice versa. It was really so interesting for me, and it's like a new, like there's a lens opening, like I'm seeing more options. At the moment, I'm thinking in a different direction in terms of, in journalism as a micro local thing, like that is happening basically in neighborhoods or in very small communities. So this is what I'm fascinated with at the moment. And yeah, so it's really interesting for me to see all the movements and all the ideas happening in this space here. Thank you.
I think, by the way, that microjournalism is a very timely thing
Really?
because of how technology is evolving, and also because of how estranged we are from each other. And um, by the way, most of the stories that we do within the solutions journalism realm, they are coming from this kind of micro landscapes,
Yeah.
small initiatives that are working in small communities, implementing small things, and we are kind of reporting on that so that maybe other small communities in other small whatever could yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
working.
again, it plays into what do communities need in
Mm.
terms of information and what questions should they answer for them to solve their problems in their own space. So it's yeah, I'm really glad to hear that this is also a part of what you're doing. It's I'm really interested in that. You
Yeah,
call it microjournalism. I love that. Yeah.
it's so cool. Do you have any feedback on this, by the way, Maryna? So like, do readers reach out and tell you this was such a cool article? We did the same in our neighborhood. So did you get any reactions on that? That would be really interesting.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, but not very often. It's very hard to track impact that way,
Yeah,
to track
yeah.
the replication of solutions, because usually people don't reach out, even if they take it. Like sometimes we find out by accident that something happened, and Rubryka was somehow involved in that as like an information transmitter. But whenever we can, or like in most cases, after we do a piece on some kind of an initiative or an NGO, after some time, maybe 3 months or 6 months, we will reach out to them again and ask them if anything has changed for them after the piece has come out. If and including if anyone has reached out to them for their insights or advice. And that is where we see most of the impact, because usually there are some stories hidden there, like in their responses, how this kind of how spreading the word about them has maybe changed their approaches, or helped them reach more people who could benefit from their response, things like that. And also another thing that sometimes happens is like, for example, not so long ago, I think a couple of months ago, we were covering an initiative that provides books for libraries in the frontline towns and communities, because there is always lack of those, and there are still children living there needing those books. Well, not only children, but primarily it's for the children. And simultaneously, almost accidentally, we were covering a library, or not covering, they emailed us because they know what, because of our reputation, they know what we do. They emailed us and asked if we could maybe help them secure more books for them, because they have really bad situation there. And we were able to kind of connect these 2 points, and they got their solution there. They got their response relief or whatever, because we were able to connect them with the right initiatives that we covered. So yes, these things happen more often than I would have imagined when we just started, and that is one of the biggest rewards of doing stories like this. Like we get to help bring some change into, especially like small communities that are often deprived of resources and all that.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's
Wow.
really, yeah. And also this like just another metric, right? So you not only have like you're contributing to the psychological health of your country or your readership, but you're also contributing to spreading hopeful ideas that are actually improving, So
Mhm.
already two very good metrics that are not in your metric board, I'm sure, and that
Yes.
are hard to
Yeah.
measure, but they are just so super important. And yeah.
Yeah, what we do, we try to collect them and then like once a year or once in 6 or 7 months, we all gather and talk about what happened there and if we could somehow facilitate things like this more often and what worked and what didn't in terms of that metric that you can't measure, right? And also another thing that we sometimes do, I think 2 years ago we launched this, or a year ago it was, I'm not sure, 2 years ago, we launched this format, Solutions Hub, where we kind of hosted these open discussions on certain topics, and we invited to them NGOs, initiatives, sometimes local officials who were working with the same issues that is like in question. And they all kind of, we created this space for them to share their ideas, to exchange contacts, to perhaps like improve their own approaches through each other's experiences. Yeah, we don't have enough resources to be holding these very often, but once in a while we do that, and that's also very motivating, I'd say.
Yeah.
Even though, of course, not all of them are ending with
Yeah.
any kind of success stories. There are always like flops, and that's normal. But when even if like someone benefits from these kind of things, it's still worth it.
Of course. I guess the third metric for me, although maybe it's quite obvious, I don't know, Stefan, correct me, but so at least I out myself as ignorant enough that I was really surprised how big the topic of sustainability is in a lot of these stories. Like even when you doing the reconstruction work, that you are saying, okay, let's not just reconstruct, but let's use this opportunity and reconstruct in a more sustainable way, for example. I guess
Mm.
that was one story. And maybe that's pretty obvious, but for me at least, this didn't reach me so far. And I would have thought that this is maybe a luxury, like let's just build as fast as we can to provide for everybody but there are actually a lot of people who are integrating these other values into this very urgent ways of helping, and that
Mm.
they don't compromise to be faster. And for me, that was a very interesting perspective, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason to that is that Ukraine is taking on this, well, everybody knows that, is moving towards the EU membership, hopefully one day. And that's part of the reason why sustainability is so present, especially within the like reconstruction projects, especially if there are like foreign investors, but also on a very day-to-day basis. Whenever like Rebuild Ukraine that Stefan mentioned, that initiative that rebuilds with their volunteer efforts, even they are very mindful of sustainability. And I would say that that is due to that they are already activists and volunteering, and even before the war, the movement towards sustainability and like things like sorting your trash and all that, they have been these things have been picking up speed. And socially active people, socially responsible people were quite involved with those ideas and are still that way. And now that they are implementing projects with rebuilding, restoring Ukraine, they are naturally bringing that in too. So, yeah, there is also this notion of rebuilding better. That is the central idea with rebuilding Ukraine, because there are and were a lot of problems with urban planning in Ukraine because of how hectic it has been over decades since the Soviet times and then into the independence. Yeah, so there is this idea that while we are rebuilding things, why not do it? That it's more, that it's better, that it works better than it was before.
Do you have any questions for us? Because we were like putting holes in you with our questions. Is there anything you want to ask?
I don't know. I'm really fascinated with all your work. I'm really glad, Stefan, that you actually asked everyone what they were doing, because otherwise I would have never found out. And you're such an interesting crowd. I shouldn't have been speaking on my own. We should have had like a proper panel discussion, like a round table or something. I hope to hear more about your work. And please, please, please do, while we are all here, please do share something in the chat, like links to your websites or something like that. I would like to find out more about you and what you do, because it all sounded very interesting. And yeah, I hope it wasn't too boring, or like I always am very cautious about sounding exactly like we're doing fluff. I hope you didn't catch that vibe. Good.
I think the things that sound like fluff most of the time are the most thought through and difficult things to do. It sounds too easy to be relevant, but those things are mostly, I'm not saying your thing sounds not relevant. I'm just saying often it sounds too simple, but I feel like these are the solutions we need, and they are difficult to do. The stuff that sounds easy is difficult to do, in my experience.
The first job I had in journalism was writing news for 8 to 12 euros. And it was the same, like people accused us of doing fluff, or not fluff, but overly like kid stuff. But it was so hard to write texts that are completely easy to read and absolutely thought through, because you can't leave any question open if kids are your readers. So it was the same discrepancy between the work you do and the way it's perceived in some group.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? Okay, so then,
Maryna, would you be open for an exchange about microjournalism? Like one time when I'm a bit further in my thinking, would you be
Yeah,
willing to share
absolutely.
some?
Yes, yes, yes. I can actually leave my email here if anyone
Oh,
wants
that'd be
to
great. Thank you.
reach out.
yeah. Oh, I will also put something, I guess.
There it is.
I will send you after, Maryna, because actually all these people here are in a WhatsApp group, so I will send you an invitation if you want to join.
Oh, yes. That would be nice.
Can continue. And there are many more people from other countries and other outlets who are also trying to do interesting stuff.
About 100.
110
Yeah.
right now.
That's a huge community. Congratulations.
Okay, so yes, so thank you, Maryna. Thank you, everybody. I'm leaving very full of hope and warm feeling, fluff feeling, some might say. And I'm really happy about this. And I'm actually, I would love to read a whole book on these stories that are actually your cases, because I mean, yeah, I just recommend to scroll
That's an
through
idea.
them.
I should write it down.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess maybe, I don't know, Stefan, did you tell me that? What was your observation? I mean, it's quite a general observation, but just like this, if you are in very extreme situations, it sort of brings out the worst and the best in humanity, usually. So you have like the biggest gruesomeness just next to the biggest solidarity, and sometimes you even have it within the same people. And but your focus sort of might shift too much to the doom and gloom, and it's like misrepresenting how the world really is. And I guess this is a really good counterweight for this too. Like, remind us of the other side that is also there, and that is also part of the human story and this piece of in this part of the world, in this part of time that we are in, right? So, and yeah.
I'm actually taking away a maybe life-changing sentence from tonight's presentation, Maryna. It's once you start looking for solutions, you start seeing them everywhere. I think I write it down and pin it over my pillow so I can read it every night before I fall asleep.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yes, that's our motto.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for having me and for the wonderful questions. It was really lovely.
Thank you for doing this work, and hope we continue this another time.